Hello， 大家好，欢迎回到外媒看中国，我是安博人。The island of Taiwan held leadership elections last weekend, and Beijing was angered by congratulatory messages sent by Japan and the US. But why? Why would Beijing be upset about that? Well, it has every right to be, and Japan and the US know that full well. Today, I will explain. Also today, the Pacific island nation of Nauru severed ties with Taiwan, otherwise known as the Republic of China, and established ties with Beijing, leaving only 12 states in the world who officially support Taipei, against 182 for Beijing. But what does that all mean? This is Reports on China. I'm Andy Boreham in Shanghai. Let's get reporting. First up today, let's do a little role play. So your best friend Diane just went through a messy divorce. While she was still with her husband, the three of you were all really good friends. But now, Diane wants you to stop being friends with her ex and support her fully. You agree. But 7 months later, you suddenly notice a Facebook announcement reminding you that it's her ex-husband's birthday. You post a public message saying, "Happy birthday." Now, would you understand if your friend was a bit upset? Would you agree that posting that message maybe wasn't the best idea after agreeing that you'd cut ties? Well, we'll come back to this question very soon. Today, I'm going to answer two simple questions about Taiwan, their leadership election, and the One China principle that many in the Western media still can't seem to get their heads around. Number one, why would Beijing be angered by congratulatory messages from Japan and the US following Taiwan's leadership election? And number two, what is the One China principle and why does it matter? But to make things difficult, I'm actually going to answer question 2 first, because that will help us answer question number 1. So what is the One China principle? Well, it boils down to the fact that both Beijing and Taipei in Taiwan believe they are the sole governments of all of China, that being the mainland as well as Macau, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. So both sides require anyone entering official relations to make that pledge. If you want to have official relations with Taiwan, you need to denounce Beijing and vice versa. We say One China because Beijing is the government of the People's Republic of China, or the PRC, while Taipei calls itself the Republic of China, or the ROC. So basically, both call themselves China, which would mean that effectively there were two Chinas. But since both claim to rule all of China, it makes sense that countries entering official relations choose one or the other. Does that make sense? There are 182 nations currently in official relations with Beijing and the PRC, which requires them to agree to the following. There is only one China. Beijing is the government of all of China, and Taiwan is part of China. That includes the vast majority of nations, including the USA, Canada, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, the UK, and so on. In fact, it's easier to list who doesn't and who officially supports Taiwan as the only China. There are 12 nations after Nauru officially cut ties with Taiwan yesterday. They are Belize, Eswatini, Guatemala, Haiti, the Vatican City, Marshall Islands, Palau, Paraguay, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Tuvalu. But if this is the first time you heard of some of those states, you are not alone. Now, I need to point out that it's not just Beijing who expects everyone they deal with to agree that Beijing is the one and only China. Like I said before, Taipei also requires anyone having official relations with them to agree that Taiwan is, in fact, the only China. Like I said before, 182 nations agree that Beijing is the one and only China, while only those 12 tiny nations, including the Vatican, with its population of 825, side with Taiwan. That's just 0.46% of the world's population. So next time someone tells you Taiwan has the world's support, ask them if they live in any of those 12 places. And I bet they don't. The fact of the matter is that the vast majority of the world agrees that there is only one China, that Beijing is the government of all of China, and that Taiwan is part of China. Which brings us to question number 1. Why would Beijing be angered by congratulatory messages from Japan and the US following Taiwan's leadership election on the weekend? Well, it's clear once you understand what the One China principle is. Let's take Japan and the US as examples. Both countries have entered official relations with Beijing and agreed that there is only one China, that Beijing is the government of all of China, and that Taiwan is part of that China. The US made that agreement and entered official relations with Beijing back in 1979, and Japan was even earlier, in September of 1972. They have both officially agreed that Taiwan is not the leader of China, and that Taiwan is not an independent nation. So you can see then that Japanese and US officials congratulating Taiwan's new so-called president is in direct contradiction with the One China principle that they both agreed to more than 40 years ago. So back to the question I asked at the start of this episode. You promised your friend Diane that you wouldn't have anything to do with her ex-husband anymore and that your support is 100% behind her. But then, on her ex-husband's birthday, you post a happy birthday message on Facebook. Would your friend Diane be sad? Well, of course. And it's the same situation here. It's contradictory and unfair, and Beijing has every right to be upset about it. But when the Western media reports on Beijing's stance, they do so in a way that continues to leave their audience uneducated on the matter and unaware as to why Beijing has every right to be kicking up a stink. The Guardian went with this headline, Taiwan election, global leaders draw Beijing's ire for congratulating new president, where they failed to explain at all the real reasoning behind Beijing's displeasure. Reuters also jumped on the bandwagon, also keeping their readers none the wiser. They ran with the headline, China opposes Japan's congratulatory message to Taiwan president-elect, which said, the Chinese embassy in Japan said on Sunday that it resolutely opposed Japanese Foreign Minister Yoko Kamikawa's statement congratulating Taiwan's new president-elect, Lai Ching-te, without explaining at all, and instead leaving their readers to believe Beijing is just being unfair or immature. They almost got there, stating, Japan, like most countries, does not have official diplomatic relations with Taiwan, a precondition for establishing diplomatic ties with China. What more can we expect, eh? Anyway, that will be it for today, you guys. But before I let you go, let's take a quick look at the results of a poll I ran on the Reports on China YouTube. I asked you guys what percentage of the world live in a country that supports Taipei and not Beijing. Well, the vast majority of you got it right. The answer, as I mentioned just before in the show, is just 0.46%, not even 0.5%. Well done, you guys. As always, I would love to hear what you think, so do let me know down below. And if you haven't already, hit like and subscribe. And I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.